By the time Lydia Ames reached the river road, the heat had made every distance dishonest. The county map nailed beside the shuttered way station had promised 4 miles to Marrow Junction. The road itself had offered no such kindness. It bent across white pasture and cracked clay, rose over a low shelf of limestone, disappeared under cottonwoods, and returned with no sign of a town except the old railroad bridge, lifting its black frame over the dry river. Lydia had stopped trusting painted numbers before noon. She trusted shade, water, and the tilt of ground. Shade was scarce. Water had become a sound she imagined whenever wind worried the weeds. She had not meant to come this far on foot. 2 days earlier, she had been washing tin pie plates behind a traveling fair that set up beside farm markets and left ruts in every lot it used. The owner had promised pay after the Saturday crowd. At dawn on Sunday, the trucks were gone. The kettle corn wagon was gone, and the canvas sign that read, "Family Wonders," had been dragged behind a shed like a shed skin. Lydia found her bundle under a bench, stepped into the road with 27 hours of work still inside her hands, and began walking because the alternative was to stand where she had been cheated and let that place become her whole story. The road to Marrow Junction had narrowed to 2 pale lines through bindweed. Heat trembled above the rails on the high embankment, making the steel appear to swim. The river below the bridge was not a river now, only a braided stain of mud and shallow water caught in stone pockets. Grass grew in the channel. Old flood trash hung high in the bridge legs. Strips of feed sack, sun-bleached branches, a torn tire wedged 10 feet above the dry bed. The height of those stranded things made Lydia feel late to a disaster she had not been told about. She went down the bank because the bridge held shade under its trusses. A long, dark room laid across the clay. The air changed as soon as she stepped under the first iron span. It did not become cool exactly. Nothing in that valley was cool, but it became steadier. The iron blocked the sun, and the smell under the bridge was different from the road. Creosote, pigeon dust, dry mineral, and a faint dampness hidden somewhere in stone. Lydia rested one hand on a concrete pier and felt it shiver. At first, she thought it was her own pulse. She had been walking too long. Then the shiver repeated, not through her body but through the bridge, a tremor gathering from a distance beyond the northern bend. The rails above made a thin whisper. The whisper became a line of metal singing to itself. A voice spoke from the dark. "Stay under the bridge." Lydia turned so fast, her shoulder struck the pier. A man sat where the shade was thickest, not 10 yards away. He had been part of the bridge until he moved. His coat was the color of river dust, patched at both elbows with leather and flour sack. A gray beard lay flat against his chest, as if the heat had pressed it there. Beside him stood a wooden crutch with the bottom wrapped in wire. His eyes were pale and sharp, and not surprised by her. "I'm not taking anything," Lydia said. "I did not say you were." The rails whispered louder. A small stone rolled from the slope above and ticked down the bank. The old man lifted one hand, not in greeting, but in warning. "Don't run to the bank. Don't stand out there looking. Stay under the bridge until the cars are gone and the shadow finishes moving." Lydia did not like orders, especially from men who had learned to sit unseen. But the tremor had reached her feet. She could feel the approaching train through the soles of her shoes. It was coming fast enough to turn the bridge into an instrument before it arrived. Above them, a signal bell somewhere on the north approach rang twice, thin and lonely in the hot afternoon. The train entered the bridge with a violence that emptied the air. It was not the long, slow freight she expected. It was a short string of silver grain hoppers behind 2 black engines, running light but hard, their wheels striking the joints with a sound like iron doors slamming in a hallway. Dust leapt from every seam. Pigeons burst out from the crossbeams and wheeled white through the shade. Lydia crouched because the bridge commanded it, not because the old man did. The moving cars chopped the sun. Light and dark strobed down the dry riverbed. Each hopper threw a rectangle of shade that slid over stones, grass, pier faces, and Lydia's hands. She glanced toward the open channel where the old man had told her not to stand. Something enormous moved there. At first, it seemed to be the train's shadow stretched by the lowering sun, but the shape did not match the hoppers. It was wider, deeper, hanging below the bridge like the dark body of a second engine suspended upside down. It crawled across the pale clay in one piece, while the cars above flickered in separate parts. It had a blunt head, a long back, and a crooked black limb that reached toward the south pier. It moved only when the bridge shook hardest, swelling with each axle, shrinking between the wheels. Lydia stared until the old man snapped. Eyes down. A bolt struck the ground where she had been looking. It fell from somewhere above with a hot metallic ring, hit a flat stone, bounced once, and landed in the dust at the edge of the sun. It was no longer than Lydia's thumb, dark with grease, except where the brake was new and bright. The train thundered overhead. Another piece fell, smaller, then a brown rain of rust flakes. The old man leaned sideways without standing and covered a tin cup with his palm. The last car left the bridge. Its wheels clattered onto the southern approach, and the sound ran away along the rails. In the silence after it, Lydia could hear dry grass ticking against itself. The huge shadow had stopped moving, not vanished. Stopped. It lay on the riverbed for 3 breaths, too dark and too definite, then thinned back into ordinary shade as the bridge settled. The old man reached for the broken bolt, but did not pick it up. He looked at it the way a person looks at a fever spot on a child's skin. That should not have come down, he said. Lydia straightened slowly. Her legs felt weak, and she hated that he could see it. What was that shadow? The bridge telling on itself. That isn't an answer. It is the first honest one you'll get. He took the tin cup from under his palm and held it out to her. Water shifted inside, not much, but real. Lydia watched his face before she watched the cup. Men offered things for reasons. The old man's expression did not soften. He seemed irritated by the need to offer. Drink little, he said. Your stomach will try to be foolish. The water tasted of stone and iron. She made herself swallow twice, then stopped before thirst could shame her. My name is Bram Toller, the old man said. I keep below. Below what? He looked up. Below what everyone else uses. Lydia almost laughed, but the broken bolt in the dust took the humor out of her. She handed the cup back. You live under the bridge. I sleep under the bridge. Living is a broader arrangement. The rails above clicked as heat moved through them. Lydia had heard old boards click at night in abandoned houses. This sound was tighter, less patient. The bridge had a voice after all, though not the kind children put in stories. It spoke in strain and release, in the stretch of riveted iron, and the small complaints of things built to carry weight, but never forgive neglect. Bram hooked the bolt toward him with 2 fingers. He turned it over in his palm. Crown washer from the west sway brace. Snapped clean. The grain train did it, or helped it finish what the sun started. Should you tell someone? I have been telling them for 11 years. Then tell louder. He gave her a look that was not unkind, only tired of simple solutions. The loudest thing in this valley is the train. It tells them the bridge is still standing. As long as that happens, they prefer its testimony. Lydia stepped backward into the shade, away from the open riverbed where the strange shadow had appeared. Her first thought was to leave. Marrow Junction was somewhere beyond the South Road. There might be a store with a water spigot behind it, a church porch, a diner that needed someone to mop after closing. The bridge was not her bridge. The old man's fight with invisible inspectors was not her fight. She had learned to survive by not letting every broken thing put a hand on her sleeve. But the bolt in Bram's palm looked recently torn from a machine that still had to work. Above them, the rails carried a thin aftersong that had not stopped. It passed down through iron and concrete into the soles of her feet. "What makes the shadow so big?" she asked. Bram's mouth twitched, as if he had been waiting for her to ask the useful question. "Come see. No promises beyond water and work." He stood with difficulty. His right leg did not straighten fully, and the crutch took more weight than pride wanted to admit. He moved toward the south pier, into a wedge of shade, where the concrete face looked unbroken until he brushed dust from a vertical seam. The seam was narrow and almost filled with cobweb. He pushed a piece of rebar hidden in a drain hole. Something clicked inside the pier. A door opened inward. It was not a door in the ordinary sense. It had been cast from the same concrete as the pier face, thin enough to swing, but thick enough to fool daylight. Behind it was a space smelling of dry rope, lamp oil, warm metal, and old paper. Bram ducked inside. Lydia stood outside with every sensible part of her urging caution. Then another bolt clicked above them, not falling this time, just moving where it should have been fixed. She followed. The room inside the pier was taller than she expected. Narrow slit windows cut through the concrete on 3 sides, each aimed at a different part of the bridge. Dusty light entered in blades. A stone cistern occupied one corner, its lid weighted with an iron pulley wheel. Shelves had been built from bridge planks and lined with tools wrapped in cloth. Spanners wider than her wrist, cold chisels, rivet hammers, hand drills, oil cans, coils of wire, blocks of hardwood, and lengths of chain hanging by size. On the far wall stood a board painted black, with white arcs and lines drawn across it like a night sky without stars. Bram touched the board. "Shadow register." Lydia stepped closer. The arcs were labeled by months. Small brass nails marked numbers. Beside them, a row of thin wooden cards hung from string. Each card bore a cutout shape and a date, some written so long ago the ink had browned into the grain. "When the west sun comes through the truss," Bram said, "the bridge throws itself on the riverbed. When a train crosses, the live load flexes the lower cord." The old keepers learned to read that flex by the shadow. Not exact enough for engineers with clean boots, exact enough to know when iron has moved. Clean boots, engineers don't use it. They used to laugh at it. Then they forgot it existed. Laughter preserves a thing only while someone is still amused. Lydia ran a finger near, not on, the painted lines. The huge shape out there was from the bridge bending? Partly. Mostly from the drop cradle. He pointed through a slit. Lydia leaned and saw what the open riverbed had hidden from above. Suspended beneath the central span was a huge maintenance cradle made of latticed iron, folded close against the underside like the skeleton of a flatboat. Its beams were painted black and dulled by dust. With the sun behind it, it would cast a solid shape, a second bridge beneath the first. Heavy chains ran from the cradle to pulleys inside the piers, then upward through boxes near the truss joints. "What does it do?" Lydia asked. "It used to carry men under the bridge without closing the rail. Painters, rivet crews, bearing hands. Later, the shade keepers used it as part of the register, because its shadow magnifies movement. A small sag at the shoe becomes a big lie on the clay." "What did it reveal today?" Bram did not answer immediately. He set the broken bolt on a shelf and took down a wooden card. The card had a black outline painted across it, the expected shadow of the cradle and span for late July. A red dot marked a place near the lower edge. He held it beside the slit, comparing it to the riverbed outside. The crooked limb reached past the dot. And that means the south bearing is not sliding. Heat is pushing the span, but the shoe has seized. Iron expands anyway. If it cannot move where it was built to move, it moves where it can. It twists. It lifts. It takes small pieces of itself and drops them on people who do not stay under the bridge. Lydia heard again the bolt striking stone. How bad? Bad enough that I need 2 hands and 1 good leg more than I own. The room seemed smaller after that. Lydia wiped sweat from her upper lip with the back of her wrist. The cistern glimmered in the corner. Her body, practical traitor that it was, had already taken inventory. Water, shade, tools, possible shelter. She could leave and keep walking. She could also leave and then spend the rest of the day feeling the bridge's tremor through memory. "When's the next train?" she asked. Bram reached to a nail and took down a strip of oilcloth. It held times written in pencil, revised and crossed out. "The regular evening freight is lighter. It may pass safe. The stone drag at midnight is not light. 30 loaded flats from the quarry if the schedule holds. They have been doubling loads because the east line is washed out near Benner, though nobody writes that on the same paper as bridge inspection." Lydia said, "Can you stop it? From here? Not by waving my beard. There's no telephone. There is a line, dead since spring. The station agent in Marrow Junction was replaced by a locked box and a printed sign. The maintenance number rings in a county office 40 miles away, where people say they will make a note. What about going to the track and putting something on it?" Bram's face hardened. "A train does not stop because it sees a stranger. It stops because the signal tells the engineer in time. You climb up there without knowing what has shifted. You may knock loose what we need to hold. Or you may get yourself killed and prove nothing except that gravity keeps its appointments." Lydia looked at the tools. "So what do? We find how far the shoe has climbed. We free it if it can be freed. If it cannot, we set the old stopboard from below. That might halt the midnight drag before the north curve, if the cable has not rusted in place, and if the engineer believes a signal he has never seen. You have a lot of ifs. All bridges are built from ifs. The bolts only make them visible." He handed her a canvas glove stiff with old oil. "Start by keeping your fingers." Lydia took it. The glove was too large. She tightened the wrist strap and followed him through a second door at the back of the pier room. It opened into the bridge's underbody. The walkway beyond was made of gritted iron and hung along the inside of the truss, 15 feet above the dry channel. Light came in broken pieces. The riverbed below looked far enough away to punish carelessness, but close enough to tempt it. Lydia kept one hand on the rail. Heat rose from the clay and met the stored heat of the iron, wrapping the walkway in a breath that tasted of rust. Bram moved slowly, but with exact knowledge. He did not test a plank unless it needed testing. He did not duck until ducking mattered. Every few yards he touched a rivet head or a brace and listened with his fingertips. Lydia found that more unsettling than if he had carried a lantern into a cave. The place was not hidden because it was sealed. It was hidden because ordinary eyes slid over it. The bridge had rooms under everyone's crossing, and all day people thundered above them, trusting a darkness they never imagined. They reached the south bearing where the span rested on a steel shoe atop the concrete pier. The shoe was built to slide on a row of rollers as the iron expanded and contracted. Lydia could see the idea of it before she understood the parts. A heavy bridge made slightly restless on purpose so it would not tear itself apart. But the rollers beneath the shoe were packed with red dust and grit. One had tilted, another was half buried. The shoe had crawled up the lip of its bed by the width of a finger. Bram crouched with a hiss of pain. There. Lydia knelt beside him. The heat radiating from the bearing made her cheeks prickle. Can it be pushed back? Not pushed, persuaded. First, it has to remember how to move. He gave her a narrow scraper and showed her where to clear the roller nest. The work looked simple until she began. The rusted grit had hardened into a bitter crust. Each stroke jarred her shoulder. Dust fell into her mouth. Sweat ran down her ribs and made the borrowed glove slick. Bram worked from the other side, slower but precise, using a pick no longer than a table knife to free a channel beneath the jammed roller. Above them, the rails pinged under the sun. "Why do you still do this?" Lydia asked, because the silence had become too full of strain. Bram kept scraping. "Why do you keep walking?" "Because nobody pays me to stand still." There's an answer for both of us. That isn't an answer either. It is when you are older. He reached into the roller nest with 2 fingers and pulled out a compacted wad of material. At first, Lydia thought it was only rust and dirt. Then she saw feathers and grass hardened with grease. "Nest," he said. "Birds did this?" "Birds started it. Men finished it by never looking." They cleared the nest piece by piece. Under the packed debris was a roller with one side flattened bright from pressure. Bram touched the flattened part and swore softly, not at the roller, but at time. "We need the jack," he said. The jack was not small. It waited in a cabinet built into the underwalk, wrapped in tar cloth and smelling of old grease. Lydia dragged it out by its handle and discovered that old tools had a density modern objects lacked. Bram directed her to set it under a cross seat beside the shoe. He placed 2 hardwood blocks above it, tapping each with the side of his fist until the grain lay correctly. "If the block splits," he said, "the jack kicks. If the jack kicks, it will find bones. Mine or yours. It has no preference." They pumped the jack together. Bram handled the release screw and watched the shoe. Lydia worked the lever, counting because counting kept fear from becoming a fog. At 12 strokes, the jack took weight. At 15, the bridge answered with a deep tick. At 18, the tilted roller shifted enough to shed dust. At 19, Bram said, "Hold." A shadow passed over Lydia's hands. Not from a train this time. A buzzard had crossed the sun above the gorge. Its small, moving darkness made her flinch, and Bram noticed. "Not every shadow is a warning," he said. "No," Lydia said. "Only the ones you're not ready for." He looked at her then, measuring something that was not her strength. "Who left you walking?" She pushed the lever down again, though he had told her to hold. The jack creaked. Bram caught the lever with surprising speed. "Hold means hold," she released it. "A fair crew, nothing worth telling." Things that are not worth telling still make weight. "I'm not one of your bridge parts." No, bridge parts complain more plainly. For a moment, Lydia resented him enough to leave. The feeling was bright and useful. It reminded her she still owned motion. Then the shoe gave a small sound, a rasp, like a large animal drawing breath through its teeth, and settled one fraction lower into its bed. Both of them went still. Bram leaned close, eyes narrowed. Again, half strokes. They worked for nearly an hour. The sun shifted. The open riverbed became painfully bright outside the truss. The roller nest emptied into a pail. Rust, feathers, seeds, a button, 2 square nuts, broken glass, and enough dust to have been swept from a forgotten road. The shoe moved, but not home. It gave back a little of its stolen height, then refused. Bram sat on the walkway with his back against the pier, pale under his weathered skin. "You need food," Lydia said. "You need manners. You're shaking. So is the bridge. That doesn't make either of you right." He laughed once, dryly, then closed his eyes. "There is a shelf in the pier room. Tin box. Corn cakes if the mice kept their oath." Lydia found the tin box behind a coil of signal wire. The corn cakes were hard and wrapped in waxed paper. She brought them back with the cup of cistern water. Bram ate as if performing maintenance on a body he did not particularly admire. Lydia ate more slowly. The food was dense and slightly stale, and the best thing she had tasted since the fair left. While Bram drank, Lydia looked down at the dry riverbed. The place where the huge shadow had stopped was scored with old painted marks, almost invisible until she knew to look. White stones had been set into the clay in a long curve. Some had sunk. Some had been kicked loose by animals. A rusted metal stake marked the red dot from the card. "How long has this been here?" she asked. Bridge was finished in 1908. Shadow register came after the hot summer of 1916. The steel grew like bread in an oven that year. Official story says an inspector noticed the trouble. Was that not true? An inspector signed the paper. That's different. Very. He struggled up. Come. If the shoe will not finish moving, we need the west eye. The what? You saw it in the shadow. The crooked limb reached toward the pier. That limb ends at the west eye. If the eye is cracked, freeing the shoe will only change the manner of our trouble. They crossed to a ladder bolted inside the truss. Lydia did not enjoy heights, but she trusted rust less than air, so she climbed with her weight close to the rungs. Bram remained below and directed her. The west eye was a circular opening in a gusset plate where rods converged, a dark ring of iron thick as a dinner plate. Through it ran a pin holding the lower tension members in line. Lydia had no words for the forces meeting there, only a body sense of them. Everything above wanted to cross the span. Everything below argued with that desire. "Tell me what you see," Bram called. "Grease, rust, scratches." Useful scratches or decorative scratches. How would I know? Are they straight? Lydia leaned closer. One is. No, two. One new, maybe. Bright at the edge. Bram was silent long enough that a fly landed on Lydia's wrist and walked across her skin. "Find the chalk pouch tied under the rail," he said. She found it wedged in a triangular brace, a canvas pouch with yellow chalk, red chalk, and a flat steel gauge. Following his instruction, she pressed the gauge against the edge of the pin and marked the bright scratch. Then she measured the gap between the pinhead and the keeper plate. "How much?" Bram asked. "More than the mark on the gauge. Less than the second notch." "Say it in numbers. I don't know your notches. Learn them now." Anger steadied her more than encouragement would have. She wiped sweat from her eyes, squinted at the gauge, and read the stamped marks. 3/8 and a hair. The bridge seemed to listen to her answer. Bram leaned both hands on the rail below. It was 1/4 in May. Bad? Moving. Everything moves. Not everything moves without permission. Lydia climbed down carefully. The hand that held the chalk was shaking. She put the pouch back because doing things in their proper order suddenly felt important. Bram led her to another cabinet, this one locked with a simple hasp. Inside was a bundle of painted boards, hinged together like a folding fan. The boards were black on one side, red on the other. A cable ran from them, up through a guide tube toward the track above. "The old stopboard," Bram said. "Before signal boxes, a bridgekeeper could raise this between the rails at the north approach, not a derailer. A warning blade, red enough to mean halt if the engineer knew his work. If. Yes. You said the cable might be rusted. It is worse than rusted." He pulled the handle. Nothing moved. "It is offended." Lydia examined the cable where it entered the guide tube. The outer strands were rusted and swollen. A wasp nest, empty but stubborn, filled the corner of the housing. She tapped it with a chisel, and dust puffed out. "Can we free it?" "Better than we can shout to a train." They worked on the signal cable as the afternoon dropped toward evening. Lydia forgot several times that she had planned to leave. Work did that when it was real. It took the future down from its high, frightening shelf and handed it back in pieces. Clear this grit, loosen this pin, oil this sleeve, test this handle, drink before your legs betray you. Bram instructed without praise. Praise would have made her suspicious. Precision did not. When the cable finally groaned and moved an inch, Lydia felt triumph rise so quickly she almost trusted it. Then the bridge above them rang with another approaching train. Bram looked at the sun. Evening freight. We fixed the shoe some. Some is not a bridge rating. Should we raise the board? Not yet. It is a local freight. Likely empties. I need its shadow. You need the thing you're afraid of? I'm afraid of ignorance. The train is only heavy. They returned to the pier room. Bram selected 3 shadow cards and handed Lydia the red chalk. You will stand by the slit and mark where the cradle head reaches when the 3rd car is above midspan. Not the 1st. Not the engine. 3rd car. The engine weight lies differently. Do not watch the train. Watch the clay. If you cannot count cars by sound, count impacts. I can count. Good. When you mark, do not lean into the light. Loose pieces fall after the engine, not before. The rails began their far whisper again. Lydia positioned herself at the slit. Outside, the riverbed glowed amber. The white stones of the shadow curve had become visible, each one catching the low sun. For the first time, she understood the register not as superstition, but as a kind of enormous instrument. The bridge and sun and train all forced to tell a measurable truth if someone stood in the right place and watched with enough humility. The local freight rolled onto the bridge slower than the grain train. It carried empty boxcars and 2 tank cars that smelled faintly of molasses even from below. The bridge shook but did not roar. Lydia counted the engine axles, then the 1st car, then the 2nd. At the 3rd car, the cradle shadow thickened and crawled over the clay. She marked the line on the pier wall. The shadow reached farther than the card, but not as far as before. The crooked limb still touched beyond the red dot by the width of her hand. Bram looked at the mark. His face did not change, but something in his shoulders lowered. The shoe remembered half. That sounds good. It sounds like half. The freight passed. In the aftermath, dust drifted through the slit windows. Lydia wiped the chalk from her fingers onto her trousers. Bram took down an older card, one painted with a symbol like an eye at the end of the crooked limb. If the west eye keeps walking, the stopboard goes up for the midnight stone drag. And they stop. They should. But you don't trust should. I have buried too many shoulds to trust the soil. Lydia looked at the shelves, the tools, the lines on the wall. Was someone else here before you? Many someones, none recently. Why did they stop? Because the railroad installed electric strain meters on 3 bridges east of here and told itself it had installed them everywhere. Because a man in an office decided a bridge that had stood for decades had proven its manners. Because the people who knew this place aged out, moved on, died, or were encouraged to call their knowledge folklore. Bram rubbed the bridge of his nose. Because useful darkness is easy to erase. He opened a shallow drawer beneath the shadow board. Inside were not diaries. Lydia was glad of that for reasons she could not have explained. Diaries made the past too soft, too full of private weather. These were work slats, strips of cedar, each drilled at one end and tied in bundles by year. On each slat, someone had written dates, temperatures, train weights, shadow reach, shoe travel, pin gaps, and repairs in tight, plain hand. Bram lifted one bundle. 1916, first full record. Lydia read a line aloud. July 29th, 60 cars. Heat by noon, 105 in the shade room. South shoe stuck. Cradle shadow over eye, opened roller bed. Cooled seat with seep cloths, held bridge for night passenger. That was Nella Quist, Bram said, bridge painter's daughter. She could read a shadow by lantern if she had to. The men above called her the girl under the bridge, until the year she stopped the westbound mail. After that, they called her Miss Quist for about 9 days. Then they forgot again. Lydia turned another slat. The names appeared only as initials beside work done. N.Q., Halvern, I, Dobbs, Sen Tiller, March, and Pike. Not stories, not speeches, just actions recorded because memory without measurement could become another kind of lie. Were you one of them? Lydia asked. I came later. Too late to be original. Early enough to learn from people nobody photographed. Why did you become a hermit? I became old. People prefer a fancier word. He closed the drawer with care. There is a seep cloth locker near the north abutment. If the shoe cannot slide dry, we cool the bed and try once more. The sun gave us this trouble. We can borrow a little night before night arrives. They carried canvas seep cloths to the south bearing and soaked them in cistern water until they were heavy and dark. Lydia expected steam when the cloth touched the hot metal. Instead, there was a hiss so faint it seemed imagined, and the smell of wet dust lifted from the roller bed. They wrapped the bearing seat, avoiding the parts Bram named load faces. The words mattered because each named part carried danger differently. You know a lot for someone with no job, Lydia said while wringing another cloth. I have a job. It lacks a payroll. That's not the same thing. No. Payrolls stop. Work sometimes does not. She thought of the fair owner promising wages with sugar on his voice. She thought of his boots under the ticket table, pointed toward the road before dawn. Work can leave you hungry. So can pride. I didn't say I had pride. You carry it like a full bucket. She threw a wet cloth at him. He caught it against his chest with a grunt, then laughed, not dryly this time. It changed his face so sharply Lydia had to look away. They set the jack again as the light thinned. This time, with the roller bed cooled and cleared, the shoe moved. Not smoothly, not generously. It moved with the grudging scrape of old weight, surrendering 1 inch of argument. Bram guided the jack pressure. Lydia used a bar to turn the freed roller, while he tapped the keeper plate back from the lip. When the shoe settled into its bed, the sound went through the bridge differently from every other noise that day. It was low, not loud, and Lydia felt it in her knees. Bram held up one hand. She did not breathe. Above them, the rails gave a sequence of small clicks, like a lock finding its teeth. Home, she whispered. For now. For midnight. Bram did not answer. They measured the west eye again. The gap had not widened, but it had not returned. The pin had walked and remained walked. The broken sway brace washer meant the bridge had lost some of the small stiffness that kept big forces polite. We need to strap the sway brace, Bram said. Temporary, enough to keep vibration from feeding the eye. Show me. His gaze searched her face. You can still go. To what? To whatever you were walking toward. She looked south past the bridge. The road beyond it had already lost its edges in evening glare. Marrow Junction might be 2 miles or 10. It might have a water pump. It might have a deputy who moved drifters along. It might have nothing but another locked sign promising help by telephone. Under the bridge there was risk, but it was risk with shape and tools. I'm here, she said. Bram nodded once. That was all. They assembled the strap from a length of flat iron with holes drilled along it. 2 clamps and a rod Lydia had to polish with sandcloth until the threads could take a nut. The sway brace lay high under the deck, reachable only by the narrow catwalk above the lower cord. Lydia climbed because Bram could not. He stood below, calling instructions upward. The sky beyond the truss had turned copper. The first evening, insects began their grinding song in the brush. From above, Lydia could see the river channel stretching east and west, a scar of pale bends under the bridge. She could also see Bram's camp tucked against the north pier. A rolled blanket, a kettle blackened by careful fires, a crate of dry kindling, and a wash line strung where no one from the road would notice. It was less a hermit's den than a maintenance outpost stripped to human minimums. Everything had a place because disorder cost time. She fitted the strap around the cracked brace and tightened the nuts as Bram directed. Her arms ached. Rust fell into her hair. Twice she had to press her forehead against the iron and wait for dizziness to pass. "Do not hurry because you are afraid," Bram called. "I am hurrying because my arms are not made of bridge steel." "Then let them rest before they teach you that lesson." She rested. The advice annoyed her because it was right. When the strap was secure, she climbed down with her palms burning. Bram inspected the work with a lantern held close. The lantern had a blue glass chimney and a wick trimmed to a clean point. Its light slid along the strap and showed each thread seated. "It will hold vibration," he said. "You sound surprised." I was prepared to be grateful instead. "That's worse." "Usually." Night came quickly once the sun dropped behind the western shelf. The heat remained in the iron, but the riverbed began releasing a different smell. Damp clay from the hidden pockets, crushed weed, old stone cooling by degrees. Bram lit 2 lamps in the pier room. Their glow made the shadow board look like a chart of constellations no sailor would want. Lydia thought they might rest then. Instead, Bram took a folded plan from the drawer and spread it on the workbench. It showed the bridge from above and below, every truss member reduced to ink. Certain parts were circled in red. The stopboard cable ran from the pier room through a guide tube to a slot near the north approach, where the red blade could rise between the rails ahead of the curve. If the midnight train must be stopped, the board must go up before it passes the milepost, Bram said. The engineer will have only the curve and the bridge between seeing and deciding. Better if we can make the board stand proud and light it. With what? Old reflector glass. Does it still reflect? Does glass forget? The reflector case was tucked under the bench. Inside were 6 triangular pieces of red glass backed by tin, each wrapped in newspaper so old it cracked when touched. Lydia helped Bram fasten them to the board's frame. Then they tested the cable from below. This time, the handle moved more than an inch. Something above scraped, paused, then scraped again. Dust fell through the guide tube. Again, Bram said. Lydia pulled with both hands. The cable moved. From above came a clank that echoed along the approach. Bram listened. Halfway. Halfway again. Halfway is where old systems rest when they plan to disappoint you. They found the problem in a pulley box mounted just beneath the track deck. The box could be reached from a ladder set against the inside of the abutment. Lydia climbed with the lantern clipped to her belt. A mud dauber nest had filled the pulley wheel, and the cable had cut into the hardened clay. She cleared it with a screwdriver and the point of a file, working by touch more than sight. The pulley turned reluctantly, then freely. When Bram pulled from below, the cable slid through with a sound almost like relief. "Board up," he called. Lydia peered through a crack in the deck and saw the red blade standing between the rails on the north approach, low but unmistakable, its reflectors catching the last smear of sky. She should have felt safe. Instead, she felt the seriousness deepen. A warning that could now be given meant the choice to give it would become real. They lowered the board. Bram logged the repair on a cedar slat, not with ceremony, just the date, the work, and Lydia's initials when he asked what they were. "L.A.," he said. "Lydia Ames." He wrote carefully. "L. Ames, cleared pulley, fitted reflectors." Seeing her name in the same plain line as a useful task unsettled her more than kindness would have. Kindness could vanish. A record suggested wait. A breeze entered through the slits. In the distance, a night bird called once from the cottonwoods. They slept in turns, or tried to. Bram took the first watch by the shadow board, though there was no sun to read. Lydia lay on a canvas cot in the pier room. The cot smelled of dust and soap. Her body, given permission to stop, began reporting every injury it had stored for later. Blisters, bruised hips, a raw place where her shoe rubbed, the ache between her shoulders from lifting the jack. But beneath the pain was something stranger. She knew where she was. She knew what work waited. The uncertainty outside the bridge had narrowed into a midnight train and a gap at the west eye. She woke before Bram called her. The bridge had changed tone. It was not yet the stone drag. No engine tremor approached. This was wind. A hard south wind had risen after moonrise, pressing up the river channel and moving through the truss with a low hum. The lamps fluttered. The shadow cards tapped softly against the board. Bram stood at the slit, listening. "Wind loads the side," he said. "The strap will learn whether it is honest." Lydia pulled on her shoes. "What do we do?" "Check it." They went back to the underwalk with one lantern between them. At night, the bridge became less like a structure and more like a set of decisions suspended over darkness. Each lamp-lit piece appeared alone, without the comfort of the whole. Lydia could hear the river's remaining water far below, a quiet working through stones. The wind pushed against her jacket, then vanished, then struck again from a slightly different angle. The temporary strap held, but the cracked sway brace beside it trembled visibly when the wind gusted. A nut had loosened half a turn. Lydia tightened it while Bram braced the ladder. Above them, something slammed. The sound came from the north approach, metal on metal, once, then twice, then a series of irregular blows. "The board?" Lydia asked. "No, it is lowered." They hurried back along the walkway. Bram could not hurry in the ordinary way, but he moved with a concentration that made speed irrelevant. Near the abutment, the noise came again. A clang followed by a shriek of cable. The stopboard cable had gone taut. Bram seized the handle. It jerked against his hand. Wind caught the blade through the slot. "I thought it was down." It was. Something lifted it. They climbed to the pulley box. Through the crack in the deck, Lydia saw the red board outside trembling half-raised, not by their handle, but by pressure from below. The cable had jumped the pulley groove, and each gust dragged it against the box edge. If it frayed there, they would lose the signal before the midnight train. Lydia wedged herself against the ladder and reached into the box. The cable was hot from friction. It burned through the glove. She bit back a sound and lifted it just enough for Bram to work the handle below. Together, they reseated it. Bram lowered the board fully, then tied the handle with a keeper chain. "What lifted it?" Lydia asked when she climbed down. Bram looked toward the riverbed. "The cradle." The huge maintenance cradle below the bridge, folded against the underside all day, had shifted in the wind. Its lock chains, long unused, were not taking weight evenly. One corner had dropped by 2 inches, tugging through the same old linkage that shared the stopboard frame. "If the cradle drops while the train crosses," Lydia asked, "it will tear its own chains or strike the lower bracing. Neither improves our evening." They went to the central span. The wind grew stronger there, funneled by the gorge. The cradle hung beneath them in darkness, mostly unseen, except where the lantern found an edge of black iron swinging slightly over empty air. Its near corner moved up and down with a slow, heavy patience. The lock chain on the west side had stretched. The retaining pawle meant to hold it had worn thin and slipped off its tooth. Bram stared down at it with an expression Lydia had come to recognize. old anger refreshed by new evidence. "Can we lock it again?" "Yes." "From the cradle." "Which is under us." "Correct." "You cannot climb onto that." "No." Lydia waited. Bram did not ask. He was too decent or too proud. He only looked at the cradle, the chain, then at the approaching midnight written nowhere and everywhere around them. Lydia swallowed. "Show me how." The descent to the cradle was by a ladder fixed to the lower cord, then a short swing on a hanging stirrup. Bram tied a rope around Lydia's waist, with knots he named as he made them. Bowline, half hitch, stopper. Names again. Small handles fixed to fear. He tested each knot twice. "If the cradle drops, you hold the inside rail and keep low," he said. "Do not grab the chain. A chain under load takes fingers as payment." "What do I fix?" "You set the pawl back on the third tooth and drive a keeper pin through the cheek plate. The pin hangs on a wire beside the pole unless time has eaten it. If it is gone, use the tapered punch from your belt." "You make it sound easy." "I make it sound sequenced. Easy isn't available." Lydia climbed down. The bridge above became a ceiling of black angles. The riverbed below opened into a depth the lantern could not finish. The cradle moved under her boots as she stepped onto it. Not much, enough to remind her it was hanging by things she had not inspected. She crouched and crossed to the west corner. The wind pushed through the lattice. The lock chain was as thick as her wrist. The pawl had indeed slipped, its nose riding against the side of the tooth instead of seated in it. The keeper pin still hung there, but rust had swollen it in its sleeve. "Found it," she called. Bram's voice came down, flattened by wind. "Lift Powell with the small bar. Do not put your hand under it." The Powell was heavier than it looked. Lydia set the bar and leaned. Nothing. She reset her feet, felt the cradle sway, and leaned again with the effort coming from her legs. The Powell rose, slipped, and fell with a clang that shook through her teeth. "Again," Bram called. Not impatient, certain. She tried again. This time, the pawl cleared the tooth and dropped into place. The whole cradle steadied by a degree so subtle, she first thought she imagined it. She reached for the keeper pin. It refused to move. Rust held it like a grudge. The wind shifted. The cradle lurched. Lydia flattened herself, one arm through the rail as Bram had told her. Somewhere above, a loose plate banged 3 times. "Lydia," Bram called. "I'm here. Punch." She took the tapered punch from her belt and drove it through the cheek plate with the hammer. The first strike glanced. The second rang. The third seated the punch where the pin should have gone, locking the pole. It was not elegant. It was not permanent. It was enough to stop the cradle from teaching the stopboard any more bad habits. When Lydia climbed back up, her legs shook so badly she had to sit on the walkway with her back against the truss. Bram untied the rope without comment. Then he took off one of his gloves and placed it over her burned palm, palm to palm, pressing the cool leather there. "You did the work," he said. The words were not praise exactly. They were better. They were a measurement. The midnight train announced itself at 12:17 by the far rail singing. They were in the pier room by then. The stopboard handle stood free, untied and ready. The west eye gap had not changed during the wind, but the strap and pawl and shoe had all been tested by darkness. Bram listened to the distant approach. Lydia stood by the handle, her burned palm wrapped in linen. The stone drag was heavy. They could hear that before they saw any light. The sound had a floor to it, a slow, deep pounding that came through the ground as much as the rails. The north curve hid the engine until late. If they raised the board now, the engineer would see red before committing to the bridge. If they did not, the train would cross on their repairs and all their guesses. Bram looked at the shadow board, useless in night, then at the cedar slat where the day's numbers lay. Shoe home. Eye held. Brace strapped. Cradle locked. That sounds like a bridge rating, Lydia said. No, it sounds like what we know. What don't we know? How a midnight drag loaded at the quarry was actually loaded. Whether the engineer was told to crawl or run. Whether the east truck of the fifth flat has a flat wheel. Whether the bridge forgives being neglected until a hungry stranger and an old fool work one afternoon. The rail song grew louder. Lydia put her hand on the stopboard handle. Do we raise it? Bram's jaw tightened. He had wanted the bridge to prove itself. He had wanted, maybe, not to spend the last of his authority on a signal no one remembered. Lydia understood that hesitation because she had lived by it. Ask too much, and people stop hearing you. Warn too often, and they make your warning into your name. Then the moon came out from behind a torn cloud. Light entered the western slit and struck the reflector glass resting on the workbench. The red pieces glowed dimly. Outside on the riverbed, the bridge made a night shadow, weak but present. A pale darkness laid across paler clay. It was not enough to read by. The train's headlight rounded the north bend. Its beam struck the bridge from track level, low and hard, filling the truss with moving light. Through the slits, across the riverbed and the far wall of the gorge, a shadow rose, larger than the afternoon's, sharper, black as poured ink. The headlight threw the folded cradle, the lower cords, the sway braces, and the west eye into one vast shape that climbed the limestone bluff like an animal standing up. The huge shadow had a break in it. Where the west eye should have made a clean circle, the shadow showed a torn crescent. A black mouth opened wider than before. Not from movement of the pin, from something Lydia had not seen. A hairline crack in the gusset plate, invisible by lantern from her angle, opened just enough by the approaching train's vibration for the headlight to pass through. Bram saw it at the same time she did. Board, he said. Lydia pulled. The handle came down hard, then stuck halfway. She threw her weight on it. The cable shrieked through the guide tube. Above, the red blade rose between the rails, but Bram shouted, "Full!" She pulled again. The burned skin of her palm tore open under the bandage. Pain flashed white. The handle dropped to its stop. Outside, on the north approach, the red reflectors caught the engine headlight and flared. The train's horn blew once, not the long call of a crossing. A short, alarmed blast. Brakes seized through the darkness. Wheel scream came at them down the rails, a metal cry that filled the pier room and made the tools tremble on their hooks. Lydia held the handle down because letting go felt like surrendering the bridge to disbelief. Bram braced one shoulder against the wall, eyes closed, listening not like a man praying, but like a man counting. The engines reached the approach at a crawl, still too fast, then slower. The first black locomotive stopped with its nose just short of the bridge deck. The headlight burned across the span, holding the huge shadow against the bluff. Dust drifted down from above in the sudden silence. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then a cab door opened. A man's voice shouted from the dark. "Who raised that board?" Bram let out a breath that seemed to take years with it. "Someone with manners." The engineer's name was Jory Meade, and he was angry in the way frightened professionals become angry before gratitude can make them vulnerable. He climbed down with a lantern and two crewmen, boots grinding ballast on the north approach. Lydia and Bram met them from the underwalk access because Bram refused to shout an explanation from the riverbed like a ghost. "There is no active bridge tender here," Meade said. "There is an active bridge," Bram replied. "It has been trying to get your attention." The conductor, a square woman named Else Kimmer, with a notebook already in hand, saw the broken washer, the chalk marks, the temporary strap, and the west eye measurement before the engineer finished objecting. She asked better questions. How much shoe travel? Which brace? When marked? What train? Bram answered with numbers. Lydia stood beside him with her bandaged hand hidden, not from shame, but because she did not want the wound to become the whole story. Meade remained skeptical until Lydia pointed to the bluff. The headlight still cast the magnified shadow. She showed him the torn crescent at the west eye. Then Bram sent one crewman with a lantern under the lower cord to inspect the gusset plate from the opposite angle. The man returned quieter than he had left. "Crack at the edge of the eye," he said. "Fine, but it's there. Opens when the trucks roll the approach." The stone drag did not cross. That decision created its own storm. The quarry dispatcher shouted through the engine radio. A county emergency operator demanded a report number. Someone in a warm room argued that unauthorized persons had interfered with rail traffic. Els Kimmer responded with the cracked plate measurement and asked whether the warm room would like to assume liability aloud on a recorded channel. The warm room became less warm. By 2 in the morning, the train had backed slowly to the siding north of the curve. By 3, a maintenance truck arrived from Benner with floodlights, a portable generator, and men who looked offended by being called to a bridge they had not expected to think about. They became less offended when Bram showed them the cedar slats dating back more than a century. "Where did you get these?" the foreman asked. "Under the bridge," Bram said. "You can't just keep railroad records in a pier." They kept themselves. The foreman did not know what to do with that, so he did what practical people do when pride cannot help them. He looked at the bridge. The crack was real. The seized shoe marks were real. The broken washer was real. The stopboard, absurd and old, stood red under the floodlights like a word from another language that everyone had suddenly remembered how to read. Lydia expected them to send her away once the officials arrived. Instead, Els Kimmer asked her to repeat the sequence of the evening freight shadow reading. Lydia did, stumbling only when she reached the part about the headlight revealing the torn crescent. Els did not interrupt. She drew the shape in her notebook and wrote Lydia's name beneath it. "Do you have somewhere to go after this?" Els asked. Lydia looked toward the road to Marrow Junction, invisible beyond the lights. It seemed no more real now than it had in the afternoon. "Not that improves the bridge." Els's mouth pressed into a line that almost became a smile. "That is an answer." At dawn, the first official inspector arrived in a clean truck and cleaner shirt. He approached the pier room as if expecting superstition and found a century of measured work. The shadow board unsettled him most. Lydia watched him try to dismiss it, then try to understand it, then realized the dismissal would require ignoring too many correct numbers. Bram sat on the bench because his leg had finally taken command. His face looked gray with exhaustion, but his eyes remained sharp. The inspector lifted a cedar slat. "These readings correspond with expansion events?" "They correspond with what happened," Bram said. "You can decide what word permits you to respect them." The inspector glanced at Lydia. "And you were trained on this system?" "Yesterday," she said. He waited for more. She did not offer it. Repairs began that morning. Real repairs, not persuasion. Crews set jacks under the lower cord, drilled stop holes at the ends of the crack, fitted a bolted splice plate around the west eye, replaced the broken sway brace hardware, and opened the roller bed fully. The bridge was closed for 2 days. During that time, the railroad brought bottled water and sandwiches, as if food could make up for years of not looking. Bram accepted both without forgiveness or performance. Lydia stayed because there was work inside every hour. She carried tools, fetched slat bundles, cleaned numbers from old cards so new measurements could be added beside them, and learned which parts of the bridge were safe to touch after sun, and which held heat long enough to burn at dusk. She learned that the concrete pier room stayed 10 degrees cooler if the east slit was covered in the afternoon. She learned how to lower the cradle 1 foot for inspection without letting its linkage wake the stopboard. She learned the difference between a bridge settling and a bridge complaining. On the second evening, after the splice plate was torqued and the shoe greased, the inspector asked Bram for the latest shadow card. Bram handed it to Lydia. She stepped to the slit with the card in one hand and chalk in the other. A test engine waited on the north approach, alone and cautious. The sun stood low enough to write the bridge across the clay. The engine crossed at walking speed. Its weight entered the span, and the cradle shadow thickened, moving over the white stone curve. Lydia marked the reach. It touched the expected line and stopped before the red dot. She felt a strange disappointment, not because she wanted danger, but because danger had made the day clear and ordinary. Safety came quietly. Then Bram tapped the board beside her mark. "That is what success looks like when it has manners," he said. The bridge reopened the next morning under slow orders. The first train across was not the stone drag, but a maintenance consist, carrying ballast, and a crew that watched the rails as if the bridge had become a living judge of their attention. Lydia stood under the south pier, not in the open riverbed, and watched the shadow pass over the clay. It was large, yes, and dark, but no longer grotesque. It moved as a measured thing, a known thing. Its crooked limbs stayed within the stones. Word spread through Marrow Junction faster than Lydia expected, and less accurately than the bridge deserved. By noon, people said a hermit had saved the stone train with witchcraft. By supper, they said a girl had seen a giant under the bridge and screamed until the engineer stopped. By the next day, a man at the store told Lydia that railroad experts had known about the crack all along and had only been waiting for the right time to fix it. She bought a tin of salve for her palm, with money Els Kimmer pressed into her hand, and did not correct him. Some stories were too hungry to be fed facts. The bridge had its own records. Bram listened to the rumors from his camp and snorted. "Huge shadows make fools generous." "Does it bother you?" Lydia asked. "Not if they keep the bridge closed when it needs closing." The railroad tried, briefly, to remove Bram from the pier. There were forms. There were concerns about liability. There was a young manager who used the phrase unauthorized habitation 3 times in 2 minutes. Els Kimmer listened, then asked who exactly had been authorized to ignore a frozen bearing, a cracked gusset eye, a broken sway brace, a fouled signal cable, and a century of correct measurements. The young manager found a different phrase and used it less loudly. In the end, they did not call Bram a hermit. They called him a contract watchman, which made him laugh until he coughed. They offered Lydia a temporary assistant's wage through the maintenance department, low but real, with a cot in the old section shed, until better arrangements could be invented by people who liked inventing arrangements. Lydia accepted the wage. She did not accept the shed. The pier room had work to do, and she trusted work she could hear. Bram did not ask if she was staying. He set a new slat on the bench one morning and wrote the date. Then he slid it across to her with a sharpened pencil. "You mark the noon run," he said. "That's it." "That is plenty." The noon run was a passenger shuttle with 2 coaches and a tired engine painted blue. It crossed light, with windows flashing in the sun. Lydia stood at the slit and watched the cradle shadow move. It reached the line, not beyond. She wrote the reading, the temperature, the train number, the shoe travel, the eye gap, and the wind. Her handwriting looked too round among the older hands, too uncertain, too alive. She let it be. Days found a pattern, not an easy one. The bridge still demanded. Heat built by noon and released after midnight. Bolts needed checking. The stopboard needed weekly raising so its cable would not stiffen into uselessness. The cradle pile was replaced with new steel. but Lydia kept the tapered punch that had held it through the wind, hanging it above the workbench with a tag that said, "Temporary, successful." Bram said labels should not brag. Lydia said that one was not bragging. It was telling the truth before someone forgot. She went into Marrow Junction when needed and discovered it was not a town with open arms. It was a town with a grocery, a feed store, a church whose basement smelled of waxed floor and onions, and people who had already formed opinions about her from versions of the story they preferred. Some nodded. Some stared. One woman asked where she had come from, meaning what sort of trouble had produced her. Lydia said, "North Road," and left it there. At night, she slept under the bridge and listened to trains approach from miles away. The first whisper in the rail no longer frightened her the same way. It still woke her. It still mattered. But fear had become joined to sequence. Wake. Listen. Check weight if scheduled. Read wind. Watch shadow when there was sun. Headlight when there was not. Stay under the bridge not because the world above was forbidden, but because below was where truth arrived enlarged enough to see. Bram taught without explaining more than necessary. He showed her how to tap a rivet head and hear a dead one by the dullness. He showed her how to chalk a crack so the next shift of metal would expose itself. He showed her how to read old grease by color, fresh dust by pattern, water seep by mineral edge. He did not turn the bridge into a miracle. He made it harder and more beautiful than that. A miracle would have relieved them of responsibility. The bridge did not. One evening in early August, a storm built without rain. Clouds piled purple over the western shelf, and heat lightning fluttered behind them like a lantern carried behind cloth. The air became so charged that the hair on Lydia's arms lifted. Trains were delayed east of Benner, and the valley fell into a rare gap of silence. Bram sat outside the pier room, carving a new wooden handle for the scraper. Lydia cleaned the red reflector glass. "Did you ever want to leave?" she asked. "I left twice." "What brought you back?" "First time, pride. I wanted them to admit they needed me. They did not." Second time, a train crossed in a heat wave while I was 10 miles away, and I spent the whole night hearing it in my head. After that, I stopped making the bridge responsible for other people's blindness. That sounds like a lonely way to be right. It was. The storm wind rolled under the bridge. Dust lifted from the riverbed and moved in sheets. The white stones of the shadow curve disappeared, then reappeared. Bram looked at her. You do not have to make loneliness into proof of seriousness. Many young people do. It wastes years. Lydia rubbed the reflector until her face bent red in it. I'm not serious. I'm tired. Tired can become a religion if you kneel to it long enough. She wanted to snap at him. Instead, she kept polishing. The truth had entered too quietly to fight. Tired had been her excuse for not hoping, her shield against wanting anything that could be taken. Under the bridge, tired did not disappear. It became one fact among others. You could be tired and still tighten the nut. You could be afraid and still pull the board. You could have nowhere else and still choose where to stand. The storm passed north without rain. Lightning showed the bridge in white fragments. Truss, pier, cradle, rail. Bram's bent head. Lydia's hand holding red glass. For one instant, the shadow of the entire bridge jumped against the clouds beyond the gorge, immense and weightless. Lydia did not flinch. Weeks later, the railroad sent a survey team to install new electronic sensors along the span. Lydia expected Bram to object. He did not. He watched them bolt steel boxes to the cords and run cable through conduit with the peaceful contempt of an old craftsperson seeing a new tool introduced by people who believed tools invented attention. Will those replace the shadow register? Lydia asked. They will measure what they are built to measure. And the shadow? Will measure what the bridge cannot hide from the sun. The sensors were useful. One caught a vibration anomaly in a crossbeam before Lydia heard it by hand. Another failed in the first hard rain because its casing had been mounted where water ran from a gusset. Bram wrote both facts on the cedar slats. The survey team returned and moved the casing. Respect, Lydia learned, often arrived disguised as a correction. By September, the heat broke. The river did not fill, but water began to hold longer in the stone pockets. Grass browned. The train sounded different in cooler air, sharper at distance, less swollen by heat. Lydia's palm healed with a pale seam across it. She could see the line when she opened and closed her hand. It looked like a small white bridge. One afternoon, as a school bus crossed the road bridge downstream, Lydia found a boy standing at the edge of the riverbed, looking up at the railway span. He was maybe 12, with a fishing pole and a face arranged to pretend he had not been caught trespassing. He stood dangerously near the old red dot on the clay. "Stay under the bridge," Lydia called. The boy froze. She heard herself then, the exact words Bram had spoken to her, and nearly smiled at the strangeness of becoming someone else's warning. But she understood now that the words were not about obedience. They were about position. Stand where the bridge can tell the truth. Stand where falling things have already spent their anger. Stand where shadow is information instead of rumor. The boy stepped into the shade. Why? Lydia pointed upward as a light freight approached from the north, its horn faint beyond the bend. Because when the train comes, the bridge writes big. He looked at her as if she might be mad. That was reasonable. She handed him a piece of chalk and showed him the white stone curve. "When the third car reaches the middle," she said, "mark where the dark head stops. Not where you think it stops. Where it stops." The train crossed. The shadow moved, huge and clean, across clay and stone. The boy forgot to pretend he was bored. He marked the line with a quick, uncertain slash. It fell close to Lydia's mark from the morning. "What does it mean?" he asked. "It means today the bridge came back to the same place. That's good?" "That's very good." He nodded solemnly, then ran off when she told him to mind the river snakes. His chalk mark remained beside hers until evening wind blurred it. Bram watched from the pier door. Recruiting? Teaching him not to get crushed. Many institutions began with less. The first cold morning arrived in October, and with it, the bridge changed again. Metal contracted. The shoe drew back on its rollers. Lydia read the movement with satisfaction, so physical it surprised her. The bridge was not fixed forever. No real thing was. It was restored to motion, and motion required witnesses. The stone drag returned to full loads under strict speed. The first night it crossed after repairs, Lydia and Bram stood in the pier room with every lamp lit. The stopboard handle was ready, though not needed. The train came slowly, respectfully, wheels beating a measured path over the span. Its headlight threw the great underbridge shadow against the bluff once more. This time, the west eye was whole. The huge shape rose and passed, not as a monster, not as a warning ignored too long, but as an old mechanism doing the one generous thing fear can do when disciplined by attention. It made the hidden visible. Lydia watched until the last flat car cleared the bridge and the shadow folded back into darkness beneath the truss. Bram exhaled. There. There was no applause. The engineer did not know to wave. The town slept. The river moved quietly through stone pockets below. On the workbench, the cedar slat waited for the night reading. Lydia wrote it carefully. At the end of the line, after temperature and train number, and shoe travel and eye gap, she added 3 words in the notes column. Shadow within mark. Bram read it and did not correct her. Later, near dawn, he slept on the cot while Lydia took the watch. The valley before sunrise was colorless and exact. She opened the pier door and stepped into the shade that had first held her out of danger. The bridge above was black against a whitening sky. Its rivets, plates, braces, rollers, pins, and scars were still only metal. Nothing about them had become gentle. But they were no longer mute to her. She looked toward the south road that once promised Marrow Junction like an answer. The road remained. She could take it someday. Staying was not the same as being trapped. That distinction mattered more than any title the railroad might invent. She had not been rescued by the bridge, or by Bram, or by the shadow. She had been given a place where seeing led to doing, and doing left a mark that could be checked by morning. The rails began to whisper far north, a small sound entering the steel before the day entered the valley. Lydia took up the chalk, checked the card for the hour, and stood under the bridge where the truth would pass over her and show itself, enlarged against the earth.